Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I used to believe that marriage was about effort, about showing up, about choosing your partner every day, even when it wasn't easy. Even when life got chaotic, stressful, and dull. I thought that's what we were doing. But then she looked me in the eye, calm, indifferent, and said the words that changed everything. I don't have to make you happy. At first, I laughed, thinking she was joking. I waited for a smirk, a softening in her expression, something to tell me she didn't really mean it. But she wasn't laughing. She was dead serious. We had been arguing about something small, like most couples do, something about how distant she'd been lately, how she barely acknowledged me when I came home from work. I told her I missed her, that I felt like we weren't as connected as we used to be. Her response? Cold. Sharp. Final. I don't have to make you happy. It was the kind of statement that sucked the air right out of the room. I stood there, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to process what she had just said. So, what are we even doing then? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She sighed, rubbing her temple as if I were exhausting her. You act like I'm supposed to entertain you or cater to you all the time. I have my own life, my own happiness to worry about. Your happiness? That's your problem, not mine. The way she said it, so dismissive, so final, made something in my chest go tight. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say, that's not how marriage works. We're supposed to care about each other, support each other. It's not just about your happiness or my happiness. It's about ours. But I didn't say anything. Because at that moment, I realized something. I realized that I was the only one trying. The only one fighting for us. And she? She was looking at me like I was an inconvenience. I don't know why it hit me so hard that night. Maybe because it was the first time she'd actually said it out loud. But if I was being honest, the signs had been there for months. The small dismissals that added up to something much bigger. The way she'd roll her eyes when I tried to be affectionate. The way she barely responded to my messages during the day, but somehow had time to post on social media. The way she never asked about my day anymore. Never seemed to care whether I was happy, sad, or drowning in stress. I had spent so much time ignoring it, telling myself it was just a rough patch, that we'd find our way back to each other. But now, she was saying it outright. She didn't see making me happy as her responsibility. And suddenly, I had to ask myself, had she ever? I thought back to all the things I had done over the years, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Leaving little notes for her in the morning, telling her how much I loved her. Remembering the small details, her favorite snacks, the way she liked her coffee, the way she needed to hear "drive safe" before she left the house. Surprising her with date nights, even when she barely seemed excited about them. Putting aside my own stress to listen to hers, to make sure she felt heard, understood, cared for. When had she last done that for me? I couldn't remember. Not because she had never done it, but because it had been so damn long since she had. That night, after she had shut me down so coldly, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She was turned away from me, scrolling through her phone, completely unbothered by the fact that she had just shattered something inside me. She had told me the truth. She didn't think it was her job to make me happy. So why the hell had I spent so much time and energy making sure she was? I turned on my side, watching the soft glow of her screen illuminate her face. She didn't even know I was looking at her. She didn't care. And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to argue with her anymore. I wasn't going to beg for attention, for love, for basic consideration. I wasn't going to keep fighting for someone who had already checked out. I wasn't going to make her happiness a priority. If mine wasn't one either. That night, something inside me shifted. If she truly believed that it wasn't her responsibility to make me happy, then maybe it was time for her to see what it felt like when I stopped making her happiness my responsibility, too. I didn't make a grand announcement. I didn't tell her, hey, since you don't care about my happiness, I'm going to stop caring about yours. That would have been too easy for her, too obvious. No, I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to experience, firsthand, what it was like when the man who had spent years making her life easier, brighter, and warmer, simply stopped trying. The first thing I stopped doing was checking in on her. It had always been a habit, sending her little texts throughout the day, asking how she was feeling, how work was going, if she'd eaten. Not anymore. That first morning after she told me she didn't have to make me happy, I left for work without saying a word. No, have a good day. No, drive safe. I just grabbed my keys, walked out the door, and left. When I got to work, I saw my phone light up. A single message from her. Did you leave already? I smirked at the screen, then locked my phone. No response. I had always been the one to make the house feel alive. I took care of the little things, turning on the coffee pot before she even woke up, making sure there were fresh groceries, cleaning up the dishes she always left in the sink. I took care of things not because I had to, but because I wanted to. But if my happiness wasn't her responsibility, then hers sure as hell wasn't mine. That night, she came home to find the sink still full of dishes from the night before. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, completely indifferent to the mess. She dropped her bag and stared at the kitchen. Then at me. Seriously, she muttered. I barely glanced at her. What? The dishes. You didn't clean them. I shrugged. I assumed you'd handle it. For a second, she just stood there, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I could see the frustration flicker across her face, but she forced herself to stay calm. Without another word, she turned and started washing the dishes. For the first time in years, I let her. At first, she thought it was just a bad mood. A phase. Something I'd get over. But I didn't. Day after day, I kept pulling back. I didn't start conversations anymore. Didn't ask how she was feeling. Didn't reach for her when we were in bed. And slowly, she started to notice. One night, about a week into my withdrawal, she finally spoke up. We were eating dinner, takeout, because I wasn't cooking anymore either, when she set down her fork and said, "You've been acting weird." I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You're distant. Cold. You barely talk to me anymore. I took a sip of my drink before answering. I guess I just realized something. She frowned. What? I leaned back in my chair, my gaze steady. That my happiness is my own problem, not yours. The moment the words left my mouth, I saw it, the flicker of realization in her eyes. She remembered what she had said to me. She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. That's not what I meant. Really? I cut her off. Because that's exactly what you said. She pressed her lips together, like she was searching for the right response. Okay, but you don't have to act like this, she said finally, her voice softer now. You're being dramatic. I let out a short laugh. Dramatic? No. I'm just learning from you. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. Instead, she looked away, pushing her food around on her plate, suddenly not so hungry anymore. She tried to pretend things were normal, but I knew she felt the difference. She started texting me more, trying to check in. I responded when I felt like it. She started waiting for me to initiate plans, date nights, weekend outings. I didn't. She started trying to fix things in subtle ways, asking if I wanted to watch a movie together, offering to make dinner. But I wasn't playing along. If she thought I was going to jump at the first sign of effort, she was dead wrong. Because for years, I had put in the effort while she took it for granted. Now, it was her turn. One night, I overheard her talking to her best friend on the phone. I wasn't eavesdropping. I just happened to walk past the bedroom when I heard her say, "I don't know what's wrong with him. It's like, he doesn't care anymore." The irony nearly made me laugh. She was confused, frustrated, but I wasn't. I felt clear-headed for the first time in a long time. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was simply matching her energy. She had told me she didn't have to make me happy. Now, she was getting a first-hand look at what that really meant. The thing about relationships is that you don't notice the little things, the rhythms, the routines, until they're gone. And she was starting to feel it. At first, she had shrugged off my withdrawal, convinced it was just me being moody. But now she was watching me. I can see it in the way she glanced at me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she hesitated before speaking, as if testing the waters, unsure of how I'd respond. I wasn't mean. I wasn't cruel. I just stopped caring. Or at least, I stopped showing that I cared. I had spent years putting her happiness first. Years of making sure she felt loved, secure, and appreciated. And she had taken it for granted. So now, she was getting a taste of what life looked like when her happiness was no longer my priority. And she didn't like it. The first real crack came one evening when I got home from work. Usually, she barely acknowledged me, just a quick nod, maybe a mumbled, "Hey," while scrolling on her phone. But tonight was different. She was waiting for me. "Hey," she said as soon as I stepped through the door. "How was work?" I almost laughed. For years, she hadn't bothered to ask. And now, suddenly, she cared. I shrugged, walking past her to set down my bag. Fine. I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to engage, to ask about her day, to start a conversation. But I didn't, because that's what she wanted. She wanted me to slip back into old habits, to make it easy for her. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. A few days later, I went out with some coworkers for drinks after work. I hadn't told her in advance. I didn't ask for permission. Why would I? She didn't think she owed me anything. So why should I keep bending over backward to keep her in the loop? At around 9 p.m., I checked my phone to see 3 missed calls from her. And a text. Her, where are you? I let it sit for a while before replying. Me, out. 15 minutes later, she called again. This time, I answered. Hey, I said, taking a sip of my drink. Something wrong. Where are you? She repeated. I told you, I said, keeping my tone casual. I'm out. She let out a frustrated sigh. Well, when are you coming home? I smirked. Not sure. Didn't think it mattered. Silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Before she could say anything else, I ended the call. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The next morning, something changed. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she cooked breakfast. Not just for herself. For both of us. I walked into the kitchen to find a plate of eggs and toast waiting for me. She was standing by the stove, pretending to be casual about it. Figured I'd make you something before work. I leaned against the counter, staring at the plate. Why? I asked. She blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? Why? You've never cared before. She frowned. That's not true. I gave her a pointed look. Really? When's the last time you did something for me without me having to ask? She didn't have an answer. Because we both knew the truth. It wasn't just at home. The shift between us was visible. Her friends started noticing. One night, we were out at dinner with a group, and one of her closest friends, Sarah, gave me a curious look. You've been really quiet tonight, she said. I just smiled. Guess I don't have much to say. Sarah glanced at my wife, then back at me. Everything okay between you two? Before I could answer, my wife forced a laugh. Yeah, of course. He's just been busy with work. I watched her. She was lying. Because deep down, she knew things weren't okay. But she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Not in front of them. Not even to herself. That night, after we got home, she finally snapped. She waited until we were in the bedroom, then turned to face me, arms crossed. Are you trying to punish me? I raised an eyebrow. For what? You know what? I tilted my head. Do I? She let out a frustrated breath. You're acting different. You're distant. Cold. You don't care about anything anymore. I took a slow step toward her, my voice calm. You mean, I stopped trying to make you happy? She flinched. Because she knew. She knew I was throwing her own words back at her. I leaned in just slightly, my voice barely above a whisper. Feels shitty, doesn't it? For the first time, she had nothing to say. She just stood there, staring at me, realization sinking in. Because this was the moment she understood. This was the moment she realized that when I stopped caring, everything changed. And for the first time since she said those words to me, she was afraid. Something had shifted in her. I could see it. For the first time in years, she was no longer the one in control. She had gotten used to me chasing her. Used to me bending, adjusting, sacrificing to make things work. Now, I wasn't playing anymore. And she was starting to panic. At first, she tried to act like nothing was wrong. She still posted her perfect little pictures online, laughing with her friends, showing off her new outfit, pretending like life was just fine. But I saw the way her eyes flickered to me when she thought I wasn't looking. I saw how she hesitated before speaking, how her fingers twitched when she reached for her phone. She was nervous. Because for the first time since we got together, she had no idea what I was thinking. It started small. The sudden affection. The way she started reaching for my hand when we were out, like she wanted to remind people we were still fine. The way she leaned into me when we were sitting together, something she hadn't done in months. The way she texted me more often throughout the day. Her, hope you're having a good day. Her, what do you want for dinner tonight? Her, miss you. Miss me? Now she missed me? I stared at the message for a long moment before locking my phone. No reply. Because she didn't miss me. She missed the man who worshipped her. She missed the version of me who spent his days making sure she was happy, no matter how little she gave in return. She wasn't trying to fix things. She was trying to reset the balance. But that version of me? He was gone. After a few days of me barely responding to her attempts, her patience snapped. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when she stormed into the room. Are we just gonna keep acting like this? I didn't look up. Like what? Like strangers, she shot back. Like we don't even know each other. I exhaled through my nose, setting my phone down. You mean the way you've been acting for the past year? Her mouth opened. then closed. Because she knew. She knew I was right. I told you, I continued, my voice calm. Your happiness isn't my job. Just like mine wasn't yours. She winced, the weight of her own words finally pressing down on her. But that's not, she hesitated, biting her lip. I didn't mean it like that. I leaned back, studying her. Then how did you mean it? She let out a breath, crossing her arms. I don't know. I was just frustrated. I felt like you expected too much from me. I nodded slowly. And now that I expect nothing, you don't like it. Silence. She couldn't argue with that. Because deep down, she knew the truth. She hadn't wanted to be responsible for my happiness. Until she realized what life looked like when her own happiness wasn't my priority either. She didn't just feel the shift at home. Her friends started noticing too. A few of them pulled her aside, asking if things were okay between us. One even messaged me privately. Sarah, hey, I don't mean to pry, but is everything all right between you two? She seems off lately. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing my reply. She's just adjusting to the way things are now. No further explanation. No long speech. Just the simple truth. And sure enough, she must have sensed the growing tension, because one night after dinner, she finally cracked. We need to fix this. I looked up from my drink, raising an eyebrow. Fix what? Her jaw clenched. Us. I tilted my head slightly. You mean me? You mean the way I've changed? She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. I don't like the way things are between us. I feel like I'm losing you. I let out a small, humorless chuckle. You already did. You just didn't notice until now. Her lips parted, shock flashing across her face. She hadn't expected me to say it out loud. She had spent so much time assuming I'd always be there. Always trying. Always fixing. But now? Now she was the one trying to fix things. And I wasn't sure if I even wanted to be fixed anymore. It happened about a week later. She came home late from work, looking tired, defeated. I barely acknowledged her. She went straight to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I figured she just needed space. But then, I heard it. Soft, muffled sobs. For a second, I just stood there. This was new. She wasn't the type to cry, not like this. Not quietly, alone in the dark. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a small pang of something. But I didn't go to her. I didn't knock. Because this was her moment. Her moment to finally understand. To feel what it was like when the person you counted on, the person you assumed would always be there, was suddenly gone. Even though I was just down the hall, I knew she felt alone. Because I wasn't hers anymore. At least, not in the way she had always assumed I would be. The next morning, she was quiet. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she didn't say a word about it. She just watched me, searching for something in my expression, some sign that I still cared. But I didn't give her one. Not yet. Because I wanted her to sit with this. To feel the weight of it. To finally understand what she had done. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishment. It was about balance. For years, I had carried this relationship alone. Now it was her turn. The silence between us was suffocating. For weeks, she had been trying to reach me, trying to fix what she never thought could break. But I wasn't making it easy for her. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to see her suffer. But because I needed her to understand. To finally feel the weight of what she had done. And that night, when she finally spoke the words I never thought I'd hear from her, I knew she did. I was wrong. It was quiet. Barely above a whisper. I almost didn't hear it. But when I turned to look at her, the expression on her face told me everything. Tears welled in her eyes, her fingers gripping the fabric of her sweatshirt as if she needed something to hold on to. I was wrong, she said again, voice trembling this time. I thought I didn't have to make you happy. I thought you'd always be there, no matter what. I just stared at her. Because this was the moment. The moment she had broken. The moment she had finally come face to face with the damage she had done. And now? Now, she was terrified that it was too late. I took a slow breath, letting her words settle between us. Then I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms. And now? I asked, my voice steady. Now that you finally realize it, what do you expect me to do? She swallowed hard. I don't know, she admitted. I just want to fix this. I let out a humorless laugh. Fix it. She flinched. You don't get to just snap your fingers and fix this, I said, my tone sharper now. You spent years treating me like I didn't matter. Like my happiness wasn't your concern. And now, suddenly, it is. Her breath hitched. I thought She trailed off, biting her lip. I thought you'd never leave. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. That's the problem. Her brows furrowed, tears now slipping down her cheeks. What do you mean? I held her gaze, my voice firm. You never thought you had to try. You never thought I'd walk away. You thought I'd just stay. No matter how unhappy I was. Because I always did. She pressed a hand over her mouth, choking on a quiet sob. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel the need to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. Because I wasn't sure it would be. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. Please, she whispered. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her fingers, at the desperation in the way she clutched at me now, after years of acting like I was disposable. And I had to ask myself, did she love me? Or did she love what I had given her? The attention, the security, the certainty that no matter what, I'd always be there. Because that's what she was really mourning. Not just the relationship, but the version of me that put her first, no matter what. That man was gone. And I wasn't sure I wanted to bring him back. She was crying now. The same woman who once dismissed my pain as my own problem was now begging me to stay. But I wasn't the man who needed to convince her to love me anymore. I was the man who had to decide, did I even want this? Did I want her? I let out a slow breath, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I said the words that would change everything. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Her breath caught, her whole body tensing. You don't mean that. I held her gaze. I do. Her lips trembled. But I'm here now. I want to try. I let out a bitter chuckle. And what happens when you get comfortable again? When you stop trying? When it goes back to how it was before? She froze. Because we both knew. This wasn't about a single apology. This was about who she had been for years. This was about the pattern. And now that I had tasted what it was like to put myself first, I wasn't sure I could go back. She shook her head, more desperate now. I can change. I swear. Can you? I cut in. Her lips parted. And she didn't answer. Because deep down, she wasn't sure either. She wanted me to believe it. She wanted to believe it herself. But some things can't be undone. Some things break beyond repair. And as I stood there, watching her fall apart, I realized I was already gone. Maybe not physically. Not yet. But mentally? Emotionally? I had checked out long before this moment. Because I had already learned what life felt like without her. And for the first time in a long time, I liked it.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.